You guys, welcome back to the Self-Selecting Podcast. So you told me right before we hopped on, I was your last person for today. But Kayla, you own a posing company. That is something in our space that, like, realistically, there's only a handful of people who are like business owners who do things outside of actual coaching. How long have you had, is it performance posing?
Yes, performance posing. I started it in 2021. And so it's been about 3, 4 years. I think we're going on our fourth year. I prior to that, I worked in corporate HR for 10 years. So I have a long extended like corporate background. And so I really wanted to bring that kind of into this posing space. So I'm not someone who I don't think like I'll ever get into coaching. It's just not my skill set. But posing and kind of the art and the detail and the technique of posing is just where I've been strong in. I did competitive cheerleading and dance. So I think that's where it comes from. And I wanted to take that, when I first started, I think I started in 2017 competing, and just watching it, the going through the sport, I'm like, oh, there's so much room for structure and resources, but compiling it all in one spot, right, to make it easily accessible for competitors, especially new competitors. I'm very passionate about new competitors and their experience. So that's where my vision for performance posing started and is to try to get it to be enhancing that new competitor experience and providing resources and structures to learning. I used to do training as well. So I know from a corporate perspective, how to train people. And so it's kind of that applying that same type of education and teaching in posing. So.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. That's so, I don't think I've ever talked about this on the podcast, but I studied HR at Texas A&M. That was my first round in college. But literally trying to explain what that is as an education is it's SMART goals, it's training, it's writing manuals.
It's
Yeah. And it has so much carryover as a business owner now because you just understand systems, and even within self-coaching, that's something that was really apparent to me is having objective metrics and data and having ways to measure performance. So
Yep.
that's so cool. And I love the notion just of trying to really consider, how much goes into being a new competitor, which is something I'm very, very passionate about, being empathetic to where someone's at, meeting the athlete where they're at, in the sense that not many people are just innately born with the ability to calorically restrict, and specifically within our sport, to do so at such a high extreme, at such a high level for so long. And I think I may have mentioned this on a Patreon episode, but I talked about this recently where a coach I worked with, I was expressing post-show that I was struggling with the adherence. And I was I've done super strict reverses before. I've done not strict reverses. And I'm just struggling to find that rhythm of the balance of gaining weight, but, it coming on in a way that is productive. And they were just yeah, if you're struggling with this, I don't think you're really cut out for the sport. And it just the apathy was really, it was really discouraging, because I was yeah, I just turned fucking pro. I've competed in multiple pro shows. What do you mean I'm not cut out for this? I'm not terrible. But that in itself really opened my eyes to it being more of a skill, the skill of dieting, the skill of competing. And I think it's amazing that you've kind of oriented your business around meeting the athlete where they're at, someone who, frankly, they might want to compete, but they might not be comfortable in the heels, in, hardly any clothing, moving very fluidly and freely.
Yeah. And it's teaching for me. It's you may not be strong in whatever skill it is, but it's having a coach and someone in your corner to help build that skill, and teach you. When someone comes to a coach, it's because they're looking for okay, I want to achieve this goal. How can I do it? How do I do it? And it's about okay, meeting them where they're at. Where are you at? Oh, you're uncomfortable in heels. Okay. Well, maybe sometimes I've started a girl out no heels in a posing session. session. Okay. Get in your shoes, get barefoot. Let's just get your body in these poses without the heels. So you can just get a mind muscle connection of what the poses feel like. When you've kind of got that down, then we can add in some heels. Like it's just baby steps rather than just throwing everything all out them. So at them, I'm very big in, like, I have a certain kind of curriculum and framework I follow. And in the sense of, you know, making sure that like no detail gets missed, but also it's in the order in which we have to do things on stage. And just what I found is like retainable by people and how they learn. And so you can't just throw everything out at someone, even an experienced an intermediate. Like, you know, you have to just little things, test, try. Once they get it, add the next thing, let it build. And so that's like something I'm just really big into. You know, if they're uncomfortable in a suit, it's like, okay, let's start out in a sports bra and shorts. And then maybe, and you know, some women don't even want to be in a sports bra, but you know, let's start just there. It's just me and you. And then maybe eventually we get into a practice suit with me and you. Or maybe we do that sports bra and shorts at the gym in your shoes. Don't have to put the heels on, but get in front of a mirror and just run through your poses. Get a little uncomfortable posing with potential eyes watching you. We just find little opportunities and like, hey, try this. Come back and report. How'd you do? You know, and then help them build that confidence. And then when that confidence builds, they see them like, okay, I can do this. Okay, next, what else can I do? So yeah, that's something I'm just really
Yeah.
passionate in.
I love it. It does very much echo, I would say, a similar approach I take in an ideology I have with coaching athletes on nutrition and training is meeting them where they're at, but also figuring out, okay, initially, how can we develop this buy-in? And even if it's not as straightforward or concrete as like seeing specific fat loss, but just like building in those wins early on, I think can get you really far. But I definitely recommend if anyone is intimidated about the posing aspect, or they just feel like, you know, I don't really know where things are supposed to go. Like for me, as someone who is very type A, I don't think anyone's surprised by that, but feeling like there's this question mark about where my hands are or where my weight is or what's bent or what's really arched or if I'm compressed or elongated. I mean, like that really helped me, like making sense of these positions. And I think there's a lot of carryover to, I mean, both fat loss, but also to our training. So definitely recommend for athletes listeners to go check out your content and check out the services you offer. But I want to switch gears. I want to talk about the season you've had this year. Girl, I just saw you compete. I mean, you look incredible. You look phenomenal. And you objectively, on paper, you did so good at your shows this year. For listeners who aren't familiar with, I guess, really your competition history, where you're at as a bikini competitor, could you tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I started competing in bikini in 2017. Back when what's so funny in 2017, the front pose is the current fit model front pose.
Yes.
So that was my first year competing in 2017. That was my first bikini front pose. And then next year quickly switched to the current one. But yeah, I did. So yeah, 2017, I took a year and a half off, I think a year a half season. Competed again in 2019. I've always done like 3 shows, I think, every season. And prior to recently, I've always taken like longer off seasons. Because I always just knew and believed like gotta eat, gotta lift. That's how we grow. That's how we improve. And so I took a 2-year off season between. No, that's a lie. I took a year and a half, and then I came back in 2021. 2021 was my first national year, so I went and did Junior USA's, and I think that's when we competed the same show,
Yes.
and
Yep.
you won your pro card in the overall. And I think I was like second call outs, like seventh or something like that in my class. And then that's when what's funny about that show. I remember Junior says I opened the black curtain. It was my first national show, and I just saw like density. I was just like the delts and the glutes. I was like, oh. It was like a realization of just how much muscle I needed. And so I was like, okay, this is a learning experience. We're just going to have fun. There is no like, I just had fun that show. I just was there to like soak it up, experience a national stage. And then when I did go do USA's afterwards, just as for another like experience. And then, but I really knew that I needed to go into an off season. I wasn't like nationally competitive. I knew I wasn't going to be getting into like first call outs or anything like that. And so then after that season, 2021, I went into 2-year off season. So that's where I made my most improvements, I think, as an athlete. Took 2 full years off, like, of 2 full years of growing, before I started a prep. And then I came back and competed, in now the years are throwing 2024. So Arnold Amateur 2024 and Junior USA's again 2024. I won my class at Arnold and then I won my class at Junior USA's. And I was 2 spot in those 2 shows. You have to be either top 2 in the overall at Arnold or top 4 at Junior USA's to your pro card. And I was 2 spots away from each of the spots. So we went into another improvement season. My feedback has always been density to the glutes. You've got a great front pose, great stage presentation. That's really what like helps me. But as soon as I turn to the back, then it's like you can see just like we need more projection coming, towards the judges for the glutes. Last year in 2024, my feedback was mostly like upper outer. And that's like almost everyone gets that feedback all the time, but upper outer glute. So I think we definitely improved that for this year. So this year I did Arnold Amateur again. I got second in my class. I was told I was too hard. So I came in too hard. It wasn't bikini. It wasn't so I needed to soften up a bit, and we did improve my glutes a lot, but and especially my upper outer, but now I just need more of that projection, especially in that low glute tie-in area. And so did Junior USA's wanted to come back with that softer look that they had asked for. And so we did that. I came back, I think 3 to 4 pounds, heavier, softer, and a little fuller. And like I brought more of the bikini look, but just still need the projections. So this year I did Junior says I won my class, and but then I didn't make it in the top 4 of the overall. So that's where we ended the season.
I mean, it's tough because I had an athlete who did Junior USA's and historically has done well at the national level, but we took quite a bit of time off to grow, really spend that time like you described, like very productively, and size was accrued. Like, I mean, she looked phenomenal and like measurements don't lie. But I mean, like, especially with striking that balance of the conditioning, which I've been on both ends of that, both sides of the coin in my case, and in her case too. It's an art form to find that balance of conditioning versus depth and fullness. And, it's a conversation that, I think I'm really grateful to be able to have it with you, being in the sport as long as you have, because for me, I've seen that progression in density. I mean, like, I'm sure they can think back to Angelica being like a turning point when like that was like, whoa, like we're getting muscle in this division. We can start training upper body a little bit more. Oh, she's even got some legs. And like as we started to see the progression into Janet, into Laura Lee, into Jen, to Maureen, it's like, okay, more muscle, more muscle. And now it's like, I'm looking at these pro shows and I'm like,
It's a lot.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna need another 2 years. Like, and I
Like,
also,
I don't even know. Yeah.
yeah, I share that sentiment though, because I took 2016 off to 2020. And then that was largely just because I finished school and I was like, I got like my dream job and I was like, I want to be like fully committed here. I had a move ahead of me. So I was like, and frankly, like I need a little more muscle. I need to, focus on non-fitness things. But in 2020, I was at a good segue to get back in the sport. And I found a lot of success really quickly. But a similar kind of realization after 22. I was starting nursing school and I was like, realistically, I'm not going to be able to split my attention both ways. And at this point, I'm very, very tiny. And it's like, I think I saw a picture of my pro debut where I competed with Ashley.
Mm-hmm.
We're side by side, and she's put on so much muscle since that show. And I'm just, it's not even smaller in like an edgy sense of like, ooh, I was smaller than her. It's like, no, like I was smaller than her. Like I was very wispy, very praying mantis like. And like at the time, that was the biggest I'd ever been. That was, for
Yeah.
listeners who aren't familiar, like I was enhanced, like there was a handlebar in place. So it's like, okay, you know, that look is, and wait, no, I'm messing that up. I don't think there was Xanabar in place for that one. Potentially. After 4 years, my brain just filters out the cash. But
Yeah.
with that, the look is different now. It's so much different. And I even think like looking at 24 to 23, like I put on muscle. I did a pretty significant build last year, and now I'm at the tail end of my prep, and I'm in a similar position where I'm like, oh, I just don't think it's gonna cut it. And I think, you know, with your commitment to the sport, like you have obviously like put the time in, the all the nuances to like what really matters when it comes to stage. Even if
Mhm.
you're doing your best, it might not translate to
Yeah.
objectively that win. What I guess, like, what goes through your mind when you start setting, maybe SMART goals, when you start setting like targets for your glutes, targets for even scale weight next time you step on stage? I mean, like, is that something that you're like, man, like I have made improvements, which like, we can agree, like you have, but is there a number in your mind or an amount of muscle that you look at your physique, you look at your physique and you're like, I need X amount more to reach my goals, to reach that next milestone?
It's a good question. I don't know if I actually have like given it a number. Because my stage weight, Arnold was 118, Junior Seis was 120 both times. So between 118 and 120. And so I mean, and I improved like each year I've added, let's see. I mean, I would like to see. I don't have goals. I would say like I don't have like a necessarily goal uh of like becoming an Olympian or anything like that. I think because I think my time is running out of it if in regards to how old I am and life season stuff and family stuff. But I would like that pro card, after all the years put into this into competing, and then to compete professionally a little bit and just see where it goes and have fun, and just to be a part of the sport a little bit longer. But as a number, I mean, I would like to probably see like at the end of an improvement season, my glutes, like I've never seen my glutes, my measurements get to 40 inches. They've gotten to, at the end of it, like 39. So I'd probably like to see them get over that 40 inches, like, measurement. But I guess I've never really thought of it that way in a sense of a number. I think I've looked at it more like, okay, when I take pictures, can I see like something that I really struggle to see on me is that dark line, that inner glute to tie in, that line and it goes into the inner glute right there. Um, I've always been very faint, very flat, very faint. And so to me, I'm looking for the density like from there, from like, does that line get darker? Does that those tie-in lines get like darker and thicker? And that's like I guess more visually what I'm looking for rather than tying a number to it. But so, mm,
Yeah, no, I mean, I like that. And I think that's so important to be able to see, okay, like, where am I at my heaviest? Because yes, I'm going to cut down, but realistically, like, I'm sure we can both think back to preps where it was like, okay, the tie-ins are not even coming in till like 4 weeks out. And like that's scary when you're like everywhere else is peeled and like I've got really cool definition and I look like I'm stage ready, but those tie-ins are just not there. So I definitely see what you're saying. It's like having more dynamic range in that separation at the actual glute max and being able to see that when you start a prep that as body fat comes down, that isn't the area that it's, per se clinging to, because as body fat comes down, it'll come off maybe what appears like a little more evenly,
mhm.
which I feel like it seems like very backwards when you almost like word it like, okay, like, you know, halfway through, like you should still have some fat on your abs or lower back or like areas that can still come up because the glutes aren't so far behind the rest of the physique,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And something that in the past, like, so after my 2 year off season, so I'm 5'4". I go on stage between that 118, 120, 121, like somewhere between there. Um, and I got up to 154 pounds. And that was over 2 years, right? It wasn't like that. Like it was gradual. And I, but like I didn't handle that reverse the best. Like there was a lot of fun eating, a lot of, and after that, I told myself, I don't want to have to, and I had to lose like my next prep. I had to lose like 35 pounds, which was fine. It was a long prep. I just didn't want to do that again. I was like, I don't want to do that again. And if I don't have to, like, I don't want to. And I want to set myself up for a little bit more success. Because at least in my opinion, being that heavy, you can't see any, like, you can't see any tie-in until you're about like 5-ish pounds away from that stage conditioning. And so I was like, okay, next reverse, we're going to handle this more responsibly. We're going to take this reverse seriously. And that really changed my mindset. So from 2023 to now, the last 2 years, any reverse I've done, I've really taken it a lot more seriously because so like last improvement season, I think I got up to about 15 pounds from my stage weight, but that way I was able to still see, I could see if like we were growing. I could see, there's measurements and things like that too, but you can see that depth better when you don't have all that body fat on you. I definitely don't believe in being someone who tries to stay stage lean. That is not, I don't even like being stage lean. I can't stand it. And so, but this time I'm like, okay, if we can stay within that, like, 12 to 15 pound range. I don't know. I don't really like to even give it a number though. I like to really go off look and like maybe a percentage, but
Yeah.
for me it's always ended up between that 12 to 15 pound range for me. But then I can stay a little tighter to be able to like and see if there's growth along with the measurements and the scale weight and things like that, if that makes sense.
Totally, totally. And I do share that sentiment. So I'm also 5'4" and coming down at the beginning of this year from 152 to what I think would be my stage weight is around 125, maybe 127, maybe 128. That it's a lot of weight to lose. And realistically, like the critique I've had for my own prep has very much been this isn't as ideal to lose this much weight in this go round because of the amount of dietary fatigue that's going to accumulate. And like there's really no way around that, even when you're doing all the right things, even when you're managing volume and you're not doing a ridiculous amount of cardio. It's a lot. And I think that's an important lesson, like, to learn at varying points. But realistically, yes, I do feel that like there are body fat percentages and even like, I don't know, hard lines that people often draw that like, oh, I can't get above 8 pounds
Right.
or 10 pounds. And, I think it's a shame because again, like they're missing kind of like what you're describing visually. They're not really paying attention to what's happening, but then they're also missing out on performance markers specifically related to recovery, which, if you're in the game of building glutes, which I'm sure most of you are, as I am, as you are, it's like, then we need to be recovering. And realistically, like sitting 10 pounds away from stage weight, even that 10 to 15 pound range, it's harder for me to do that right now at the end of a fat loss phase versus last year when it was just a fat loss phase to go down from 145 to 135 or 130. It was like, it still has components to the diet that suck, but it's a much different game when it's like stretched out that long or when the finish line is this unsustainable, unrealistic body fat percentage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me what I've learned, like, I mean, for me, I told my, like, I don't mind putting on weight. Like, I'm someone like I know I need to grow, and in order to grow, we've got to eat, we've got to put on body fat, and we have to lift hard. And So like if I like I don't ever tie a number to it. If I got up to 20 pounds above my stage number, okay. Do I like, are we recovering? Am I like, I'm eating great right now. I've never eaten this much at this like weight, but in this like my look. But I'm okay. I mean, I'm like, okay, let's keep eating. We can add more body fat. I'm happy. I'm fine. I do like to I have a thing where I'm like, as long as to me, we all have our own, I guess, what makes us feel like, good. What makes me feel good is, do I look and feel like an athlete? To like my version of an athlete, not anyone else's, not comparing me to anyone else, but to me, when I walk around on my day to day, not prep, just my day to day, do I look and feel still like an athlete? And I don't tie a number to that. I just, do I have energy in the gym? Can I push myself? Am I getting good sleep? Am I growing? Am I growing? Is the result actually happening? And if it's not, then we need to look at like, okay, what's going on? Like, why not? Do we need to eat more? Do we need to add more body fat? And I'm totally okay to that. If my coach says like, yep, we need to keep going, growing in order to grow, then that's what we need to do. And so that's the kind of athlete mindset I have. I know that where it's ended up for me is that, like, I'm eating a lot of food and I'm willing to eat more in order to grow. So I've always been the type that's like, I'm willing to kind of do whatever it takes. And I don't try to tie myself to that stage lean. I don't try to tie myself to like, we can't get past 10 pounds above state. Like, that's still really lean for a female. Like when I'm 10 pounds above 118, 120, like in that 130, like it's still really lean when you go walk around day to day compared to the general population. Like, we're still really lean. If I can see like abs and shoulder cap, like I'm still really lean.
Totally. No, I agree, and I agree to the sentiment that like it is very dynamic, and like you have to weigh it against like how do you feel, and like what is the opportunity cost if you were to let scale weight go up or if you were to force it back down.
Mhm.
And with that, like I kind of want to segue into something we were talking about before we started recording, was around like that willingness to do whatever it takes. I mean, like, obviously, like, you wouldn't do this sport if were 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like, you're willing to take the longer off seasons. You're willing to, work on the presentation until you're satisfied with it. And even like eating to the extent that, like, if coach says eat more, you're willing to eat more. But,
Mhm.
we see this shift, and I would say, like, largely it's started and like picked up momentum, gained momentum in the last couple years of individuals, in, I would say, competing when they're not in competition prep, or even, I guess, competing in the sense like trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to match what other people are doing,
Mhm.
specifically when it comes to PEDs. And it's something like when I started posting about PEDs and talking about like really an approach that, just I would say favors the athlete who is aware of the risk and just wants to know what they're getting themselves into.
Mhm.
Like I knew it was a problem. I knew even early days that like PED use was something within the bikini division, but it didn't become apparent to me until I started talking with a lot of these girls and doing consults where I'm like, hey, like, this is your national show. It's your first national show, and this is what you have in place. And they're individuals who have concerns around, what does this progression look like as I, compete at the national level, as I compete at the pro level. And I'd love to hear just like your experience having started in an era of bikini that
Yeah.
like myself, like it didn't require like the look did like whether people used or not, it didn't necessitate it. Whereas like now I very much feel like it's not just necessitated at a high level. And I guess let me like preface that because I don't want people to think I'm saying you need to take it.
Right.
Um, let me rephrase that. I think there's a lot of individuals who have normalized use
Mhm.
in a way to almost frame it as, well, that's entry level. Like if you're
Yeah.
starting competing, then you have to use these things. When in reality, like, yeah, like, yes, the looks are very dense, they're very enhanced, but it didn't always, that wasn't always the case.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah. I remember starting in 2017. To be honest with you, I don't think I even like, I was so naive to the PED world until like, I'm going to be honest with you, until probably 2022. Like I went my whole, from 2017 to 2020, 2023 was when, I dove into that world. And so from 2017 to 2022, so naive. I didn't, it wasn't in my environment. It wasn't something that my coach and I ever discussed doing, nothing. And my friends, like, it just wasn't something that came up and was talked about. It wasn't as I think popular being talked about on social media, and so just didn't have a lot of information on it. It wasn't a thing. I do remember, I had the idea that I would be a natural competitor forever. I did, when I first started, for a long time. I just did. I had that mindset of like, oh, it's not needed, you can achieve this, just, and that, with more time and effort and time and hard work, and just, you just have to put your time in and hard work, and that's true. But with how the sport has evolved, we have seen it. It's that mindset is, it got harder and harder to, or that fact, it just got harder and harder with where the sport evolved. And so it, for me, I think I didn't start once I start, because I feel like I'm one of the last, to go pro in my circle that started, in the sport. I think I'm like, out of all my friends, like close friends or people I came up with in the sport, but I think I'm like, might be one of the only ones that haven't gone pro yet. I might be. And so I think, like, in just, as I moved up in the sport, as I got to the national level, as I started communicating more with athletes at the national level, getting their pro cards, competing in the pro level, then started learning more about the PED world and the enhanced world, and just how, prevalent it is in the sport and in the bikini division. And it probably took until about getting to a certain level in the sport to even start being in that, having that be part of a conversation.
I definitely think that there are still a lot of people who, I mean, like, I get the comments all the time where people, I get it. Like, I'm talking about things that kind of step on people's feelings. And realistically, it's like, I want the message to be not that the drugs are needed, but rather that they are prevalent, that they are being used.
Mhm.
Because I remember being that athlete too, who was like, hey, like, I will use non-androgenic PEDs, or I'm going to only use in these instances. And dating that, it's like, even before that, I'm going to not use anything. Like, when I competed in my first four shows, like, I was a proud natty and I had a chip on my shoulder about
Yeah.
people using enhancements.
Mhm.
And then it became apparent to me. I mean, like, I wouldn't even say at the point in which I started using enhancements, but it became apparent to me, like, okay, my goals, based on the timeline that I have, I'm going to choose to use these in. Not, it was never one of those like, is this required?
Right.
Whereas I'll say right now, there are some nerves around the level of density that I could bring, even having built, like, even having taken 3 years off. I'm like, I've
You
had,
added a lot.
but
I've watched you, like, I have been watching you, and I'm like, oh my God, can I please have this kind of.
and so I had a call this past week with a girl who's a pro who just competed,
Mhm.
and she's with a big team, and she's like, hey, like, my coach just leveled with me. She didn't even do bad. That was the thing. She's like, I just want to win though. I want to be like in the top. And her coach was like, realistically, like, 5-10 milligrams, it's not gonna cut it. And I'm talking about Anavar. Like, and like, just to hear that, she's like, yeah, like, I'm not really willing to go past that. But in the same instance, like, that was a little sobering to hear from my coach, who very much has my best interest at heart. Like, she's not trying to push that on me,
Right.
but she is trying to calibrate expectations that, like, what is being used is more. And if you're not using that, which I really want listeners to hear me say this, like, that kind of use to me, like, I would classify as abuse. Like, that's not a small dose. Like, there are doses that are being run and compounds that are in place that, like, I would say are very risky and not ones that I really see myself in any instance justifying.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard some stories. I've heard some stories, and, being an enhanced competitor now. And I made that decision, and I went that route because I did look at my timeline. I think I got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm paying attention to what, what's winning, where's my physique at, how long have I been in the sport, have I checked all these boxes? At the time I felt like I was doing everything I could have done, with and then my age, like, just, and I'm not going to be competing forever. Like, I was like, this is probably around when I want to stop for other future goals I have, life goals I have. And so I looked at that timeline and I was like, okay, let's go ahead and let's give this a shot. I feel like I did, the most potential that I could, for this amount of time. Looking back now what I know, especially with training, I've learned a lot about training. I think I could have maybe waited longer. I do. And put some better tools and techniques with my training in place. And see where that got me. And then maybe make that decision. But it's not all about even growth. It's just like, peaking strategies and things like that, and how these girls show up nowadays on stage. And it's, yeah, I do have, like, even being an enhanced competitor, I definitely do have my like limits. Like, there's just some things that I don't, as a woman, I don't feel comfortable doing, because I don't want certain side effects. I don't want, just, and so I do put a limit on things. I'm really big in making sure we're checking blood work. We're watching that. If anything is alarming, then I'm the responsible adult that's like, okay, not for me. Like, it's just, and just making sure I'm putting my health first as much as possible, knowing the risks and knowing that are potential out there, but not just going like, yep, throw everything at me and let's see what happens. I want to win that bad. That's not the mindset I have. And I do try my best to make sure that, like, at the end of the day, I'm going to be healthy, and I won't be competing forever. And so long term, where's my body going to be at?
I love that. And I do think it's so, admirable and mature of you to kind of have those established limits. And that's something that I do try to encourage listeners and athletes I work with one-on-one to really get specific with, because I've talked with other pros who I would say are running very high risk cycles. And they're like, yeah, I've experienced anatomical changes and, like, I'm not bothered by it. Like, that was never something that concerned me. They're like, my voice is a little lower. It's not what it was, 20 years ago, but I'm okay with it. I only have a few years left anyway. So I'm okay with, pushing things right now. And that's where I don't think it's really, up to anyone to define, like, what is femininity, but it's important, to always give yourself that, like, that mobility that, like, hey, like, even if you're doing things conservatively, even at a low dose, even for a short duration, like, we can't ever be 100% certain that these things won't have effects. And I think it's really wise of you to also consider just, like, overall, like, your life goals. And I'm imagining, like, family planning might be, like, dictating some of that decision. Is that right?
Yep, 100%. Yeah, yeah. I want to make sure I can have a baby. I want to make sure that, I'm 34 years old. Most women have had kids by now, and so I'll be, a little bit on the older end of the spectrum, age range, for becoming a mom. And so I want to make sure I don't put myself in, any kind of danger of, you never know, right? You never know. But just making sure, watching those markers and being cognizant of, like, okay, what are my goals? I do want to have a baby someday. So we have to watch certain things and be careful and make sure that, as much as I love bodybuilding and I love the sport and I want to achieve my goals, it's like, at the end of the day, it's bodybuilding, and I'm not, I'm going to have what's going to be like, when I'm on my deathbed, I'm going to have my husband, my kid, like, my family, my life, and I'm not going to still be competing. And so, I don't know. That's the mindset I have. I love the sport. I appreciate what it's taught me, and, what it's done for me, but also, like, there is an end point, and I don't feel like throwing everything and risking everything for the sport, if that's not going to be there forever for me.
I think that's so wise. And, I just did a podcast right before this on perimenopause and ovulation and amenorrhea and kind of going through the distinct differences between each one because a lot of women in our space, I mean, like they're, working either with a public provider, private provider, and many are getting diagnoses late 20s, early 30s of perimenopause. And I think in this case, like kind of like what I dove into is just essentially how like, there is this like idea around like PEDs being a culprit just strictly behind, these states of poor ovarian reserve or insufficiency or even just like hormonal imbalances. Yet we can't look away to the fact that like prep in itself, like there's not a caloric number that we can be like, okay, under 1200 calories, and then you're taking off several of your eggs for this amount of time. Each person is different. I always use this analogy with like it kind of like reflects back to like how strict your parents were growing up. Like some parents were like super strict. You got to be minus, they take away your keys and like you'd be grounded and like you'd have a lot of chores and like yard work. And like for some people, they don't have to get that lean or don't have to be at that low of calories to start experiencing these states of amenorrhea. So like actually losing their period or in a lot of cases in ovulation where they're getting a period, but they're not ovulating. And we do know that like the longer times that you spend in these states where you're lacking ovulation, it's not great for fertility. And that's really a message I try to encourage individuals to just think about, especially if family planning is a part of their future, is what is the ratio of the year in which you're ovulating versus not ovulating? Because if you're going 9 months and then we're taking this 3-month mini off season, just trying to, get ready for the next season, it's like that in itself, PEDs aside, could be very impactful on someone's fertility down the line.
Yeah, 100%. I am someone that does, when I get certain leanness, I do lose my period and, in prep and that's why I know it's important to go into these longer off seasons. Give it time to get that back, get the food worked up, get the cardio worked down. Like, luckily with me now, the past couple times staying, not putting on 40 pounds in an off season and staying more in that like 15 to 20 pounds, like right there. I've had to cut off less. So my preps the last couple of times have been a bit easier. My cardio hasn't been as high. My food has been higher and not as low. And they've each gotten better and better. And so when reversing, I'm starting out like I'm at 2,300 calories right now, 3 weeks post show. For me, I've never been able to do that. And so like already being at this point, like, hopefully we'll be starting to see my cycle come back soon here. And like my cardio is at 15 minutes a day. Like I've never been, for me, at this kind of state. I feel much more relaxed and, my body's able to recover. I feel great. I'm recovering. I'm sleeping the best I've ever slept. And so, hopefully now we see that the body kind of is able to recover and we get that cycle back and we go into and we don't just start prep again just because we ride this out. We let the body have that break. And then when we have the growth, when we're ready, then when the body is ready and we have the growth we need and we feel like it's the right time, we can start prep again. But it's important to make sure that like we're recovering. That we're not, I believe, at least for me, I couldn't do, oh my God, I couldn't take like just a few weeks off and then go hop back in. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't.
No, I don't, I can get as lean, I can get too lean,
Yeah.
per my last season, you get way too lean, overkill, but, that part of it, like while I can appreciate like that kind of physique, that's not where I sit comfortably. That's not where I'm my best self. And like, I think you'll probably be able to relate to this, more than a lot of people is for me, the thing that really gets to me in prep and specifically this prep has been the downregulation from business, like feeling like I'm almost handicapped in a way, like cognitively, if I am a little more run down, if I'm a little more fatigued, because realistically, like I coach full time, I do content full time, like it's me and then my assistant Emily, and she's incredible and does so much for me, but the amount of output that goes out on a monthly basis is like I'm very proud of that. And that was something like going into prep. My boyfriend owns a very successful business. He's like, what is your strategy with like knowing that like you're not going to have that same bandwidth? Like you're going to be tired, like you're going to be hungry, and like you need to like, take care of yourself. So that means like not necessarily taking a step back from your business, but like respecting like what your limits are as those change as you get to lower body fats. And that probably has been the hardest part of this fat loss phase, is like knowing that like, okay, physically, like I'm not going to be better by demanding more from myself cognitively. Like I do need to show myself more grace and give myself time to recoup, because otherwise we get sick, we get injured, and that just sets us back. So
Yeah, exactly. I experienced that last year. So last year's prep, it was my first year where performance posing really grew. And it really grew, and I had a volume of clientele that I hadn't had before. And but I was in this prep, and I could tell cognitively, like my patience were thin. Like I just didn't feel my best self, and yeah, professionally, and maybe no one would really notice, but like what you're like, we're like goal driven, high achieving people, and so it's like what like quality you can put out, right? And when you even feel a little bit of that not being put out, it really like bothers you. Like I'm like, oh, this isn't how I want to show up. And so I had to put some systems into place to like, I remember I thought like, oh, on peak weeks I can take clients. No. Like I learned, nope. So now going forward, peak weeks, I have to shut my calendar down, and I just let my clients know. And I can't, because I won't be the best posing coach I can be. I won't be the best business owner I can be. And I just know that. And so I don't take clients, and then I can handle the like day-to-day business stuff that I need to handle, that my brain can handle. So I did that this year. And then I also like, I reworked my schedule. I was like, okay, I know I used to take like maybe 5 hours of clients a day, back to back. And now I learned, okay, in preps, I can only do 3. I can handle 3. I need to break it up like this, like in order to just show up as like,
yeah.
the best, just the best quality that I can. So yeah, and I know, like, for example, like this year with performance posing, we've got a lot of projects we need to get out. Like I've got some really big, important projects I've been trying to get out, and that need to get out. So there's no competing this year. I was like, I need the brain capacity and the time to put all my energy into that. And that's what we're doing. And so that's where like, you just kind of have to like look at your year, look at your life, and say, okay, where does prep fit? And then where do I need an improvement season? Where do I need that balance?
I resonate with that so much. Yes, because it very much is like a personal standard. It sounds like you and I kind of hold ourselves to for calls and consultations and new client onboarding. And it's like, even with good systems, it's like you are doing something that, you want to reflect, especially for new clients, you want them to have a great experience. And like, for me, yeah, that is, it's not something I want to compromise on. So, I mean, oftentimes I'll get that question, is like, well, how many clients do you take on at a time? And I really do cap out at about 30, because some clients I'm doing 20-minute weekly calls, which realistically they go over to 30. And then if I'm doing hour-long consultations, it's like, okay, I'm doing a dozen of those a week. That adds up. And like pairing that with then just in like formal client check-ins where it's written, it's like there's not a lot of time for new clients in the sense of like, hey, and I guess how how I want to say this, I can't really create that bandwidth to scale and take on, let's say, 50 clients or 70, which also isn't necessarily how I want to coach or the kind of coach I want to be. But that point aside, I love that you touched on at the end there, just like making prep make sense for you, not just feeling like, okay, like it has to come at this time. I mean, I think a lot of people feel compelled to get on stage, and I think it is largely tied to feeling relevant in the sport, feeling like they've still got it. And it could be intrinsic, where it's still like, I just want to prove to myself, like I still am, competitive. And I very much feel that this kind of question in the back of my head, like, okay, I've done well on paper, but realistically, how well would I do now? And I think, I had a conversation with a client yesterday who was going to do universe, and we talked, and she's like, I just, it doesn't feel right. And I'm like, that's it. Like, we don't have to do it. Like, you don't have to convince me that like it doesn't feel right. Like, if you have that gut feeling, we pick another show. And if we get there and you don't want to do that show, we don't do that show. Like
Always a
that's
show. There's always a stage.
yes.
There's
There's so many.
There's so many. That's what I tell girls, like, because I work with, I work with predominantly new competitors, or like in that, like, brand new, never competed before, or 1 to 3 years, like right there. And a lot of them are, like they'll ask for advice or and things like that. And the biggest thing is like, don't get your heart set on one show. Like, just even if you start a prep and it just, life happens. Like, what if you change your job, you're moving, you're going through a breakup, I don't know, it could, there be so many things, that there's always a show. You don't have to set your heart on one show, and you don't have to prep just because you feel like everyone else is prepping, because everyone else is always going to be prepping. There's all like, there's seasons of this sport for a reason. And you want to pick, like, I always encourage, like, you want to have a good prep, and you want to look back at your prep and back at your show experience. Like, did you enjoy and love the experience? Like, that should be your goal. Like, and not necessarily, I mean, I know it's a competitive sport and we want to win, I know, but also like, but do you want to win in like your way, like the best way? Like, or do you want to look back and like hate? Because I know lots of competitors, and I have lots of friends that have done some preps where they were miserable, and like they have nothing but negative things. Yeah, maybe they achieved a goal, but like it was a miserable journey. And like, is that the journey you want tied to your win? You know? Yeah. So it's just, I'm thinking of those kinds of things when you're planning your season. Like, where does it fit?
I I love that. I love that you touched on that. And I wanted to say this earlier. It just came back to me in 21 at Junior USA's. Like, I remember what you're describing, like opening up the black curtain, kind of going back. That prep for me was very mentally taxing. And I just remember how doubtful and insecure I felt like on the way to South Carolina. It was I think my birthday the weekend before, and like literally I was also PMSing, so everything was heightened. But like, um, I remember like my boyfriend at the time, like I was like, you have to tell me if I'm not ready, if I'm not lean enough. And I mean, he told me, 'cause I mean, to his best knowledge, he's like, yeah, I don't think you're lean enough, like a week out. And my coach was like, no, like, you're on track, you're going to be right there. And like, I literally remember the day before, like that coach asking me if I could just fast, like how little can I eat that day as I'm doing an hour and a half of cardio, like on the way to athletes check-ins. And it was just like the culmination of like not having the best plan, not having a good support system, being so, I guess, how do I want to say this? Not really checking the insecurities and the doubt, like not having a good system in place intrinsically to manage those doubts. Cause I think that is probably going to be something most people experience. But do you have something in place? Do you have control of that internal dialogue to be like, yeah, you can feel this way, but we're not going to give it unnecessary credence. It doesn't deserve more attention. And I just remember that morning, like getting my makeup done, getting back to my room, and I had some ungodly hour, like 3:45,
Oh
because it
God,
was
those
3:45.
3:30 a.m. makeup appointments.
Yes. Well, it was 3:30 or 10. And I was like, last national
Oh,
show I went to, someone missed their prejudging. No, thank you. You want to do it the night before? I don't care. Like, just, I was so desperate. I was like, I'm not doing a 10 o'clock
no.
appointment. Like, you're
I'll pick
insane.
that 3:30 any day. I'll wake up early. We'll be fine. We'll be safe.
Yeah. But I just think back to after the fact, I was like, okay, we're done with this. Like, we're done with this kind of attitude in prep, because like it just nullifies all of the good and all of that is there for you to be proud of. And I remember that part of it, like that was just so heavy and such a big cloud for me getting on stage. And I do wonder, I'm like, okay, if I'd had more confidence, if I had manage that internal stress a little better, if I felt a little more compelled to be like, hey, why are we rushing this so close to show, like the fat loss phase? I think I would have looked better for it. And that's like with when, like, I couldn't have placed any better, but I don't think that was like representative of my best that day.
Yeah, I have a in a I it was my 2 year off season between 2021 and 2023. It was at the end of 2022. And I actually thought about starting prep for my 2020 Okay, I'm gonna get the years mixed up. Anyways, I was thinking of starting prep 6 months earlier than I did, but I was not in a good place personally, and just stuff mentally. I'm not really someone who misses the gym. So when I start missing the gym and taking time off from the gym, there's something mentally going on. Like I'm distracted. Because I love the gym and I don't like to miss things. I'm gonna check the bot. Like I want to make sure I got everything in. And so I was missing the gym. I was taking a week off here. I was taking a couple weeks off here. I just was not in a good mental space. And I told myself, I was like, you're not ready to start prep. You can't start prep like this. You need to start prep when you feel good, when you're in the gym consistently, you're eating your food consistently. This is the list of things. And when you've done this consistently and you're happy and you're excited to go back to the gym, then you're ready to start prep. It took me 6 months. I didn't start prep. I waited. I had friends starting prep. There was friends I wanted to do prep with and travel with, and experiences I wanted, but for me, was not ready. I would have been miserable. It wouldn't have been a good prep. And I'm so glad I just let those 6 months go on. I was able to grow more. I was able to, it was, I was able to, just kind of rein things in and feel good when starting prep. And then I started prep and I was motivated. I was ready to go. I had a good prep, like positive, like luckily, knock on wood, all my preps, I've been in a good space. Like I've been in a good headspace and it's been positive and it's been, maybe there's little hiccups with something here and there, but small. And because I've made sure that like when I started prep, at least for what I could kind of control, I was starting it at the best time for me. And then I would just whatever came up, if anything comes up, because life's not perfect. We manage it, we navigate it. But for the most part, I put it in a spot in my year or my life where it fit and it was doable and manageable. And so I've had really good preps because of that, because of keeping that kind of stuff in mind.
I love that, and I think it shows a lot of maturity and self-awareness. And I think it does show patience too with the fact that like, realistically, how do you want to feel when you get on stage? Do you want to feel like you were kind of dragging yourself across the finish line and you forced yourself to do it? Because I mean, again, it doesn't it rarely pans out the way that we want it to. Like we compete largely, most people compete to win or to at least place what they consider well.
Mhm.
And even if you make improvements, it doesn't always work out that way. I can say like my 22 season versus my 21 season, I did look significantly better. I brought a different physique, I brought a different look, and I didn't place technically as well, but there were improvements, and that was such a big win for me, even just like prepping myself for that show and like getting as lean as I did. That was a huge milestone. And the fact that like, okay, people are like, well, you took less, in your shows. It's like, yeah, and that's always something it's gonna matter to me, but realistically that's so far out of your control that like you have to have a clear outlook on like why you're doing it. And like for me, the thing that's been a really big anchor is knowing that like I want to make those improvements, and how it plays out on stage, hopefully I'm prepared enough to where it'll play out favorably. But if it doesn't, I'll at least still have those improvements that I made. But I think that's so hard to do it if you are kind of punitive almost in the approach to prep.
That I love that point you just brought up. That is something that I hold so like close to my heart, and that I share, that message I share with girls I talk to is um like, so here's the story here's like something that I share with others. And some people are like, well, you shouldn't have that mindset, but I'm like, it's reality. I don't know if I'll ever get a pro card. It's not guaranteed. Like it's not guaranteed. I may have to hang up the heels one day because my timeline wise I'm done and I didn't get the pro card. And that's okay. I've accepted that, because what I can look back on is every single prep, every single improvement season, I've learned something and I've improved. I've showed up differently every single season. Even improvement seasons, I've showed up differently in how my intensity, my being intentional with my lifting, just becoming a better lifter. But then in preps, like, just being more efficient with things, or my stage presentation, my look, my conditioning, just I've just been able to improve something every single time and show up improved and different and better. And that's what keeps me going. It's that work. It's the work that we do off stage that I love and what drives me. It's the process. That's what drives me. That's my why. That's like, do I want to win? Yes. Like, duh. Like, right? We compete because we're competitive people and we want to win. We want to achieve these goals. But in this sport specifically, none of it is guaranteed. You can only control what you can control, and what you can control is the work it takes to show up on stage. And that's what drives me. And that's what I try to tell girls to focus on is find the work. What is it that you're passionate about within doing the sport, not just winning, but that keeps you working and keeps you showing up, and focus on that, and like look back and go, whoa, look how much I've grown mentally. Look how much I've grown, not just physically, but physically is cool, is great too, but a lot of it is mental, like with this sport, how much we grow mentally, and what we become, and looking back and reflecting on that, and building that confidence muscle of what you can do, not even just within the sport, but you can take a lot of the skill sets and behaviors from this sport and apply them to your personal life, apply them to your professional life. And that's what I choose to focus on. And if the pro card happens, if the big win happens, then it happens and we're going to celebrate and we're going to be excited. But if it doesn't happen, it's okay. I can look back and show that like I gave it all I got. I improved, and I'm happy about that.
And that, I mean, it's something that like no one can, I don't know, it doesn't really come to fruition in the sense that like it's not tangible for anyone else but you. To know that like, okay, there was nothing more I could have done. And I think that in itself is kind of beautiful at the end of prep to almost think about like you're gonna be faced with that reality, assuming you don't lie to yourself. But like for me, it's always been like that moment right before stage, knowing that like whatever happens, like I couldn't have changed this outcome because I did everything within my power to create the best outcome that I could. And for me, I think like during those low points of prep in the past, it's always been like, how do I want to feel right before I get on stage? And what do I want to be going through my mind? Because it's either going to be you did everything you could, or here are the corners that I, cut. Here are the shortcuts I took. Here are the things that, now I wish I'd spent more time on. So this has been so good. I really, really enjoyed this. And thank you so much for taking the time. I would love to funnel people to you. Where can they find you? Where can they find your posing company?
Yes, thank you so much. I enjoyed this a lot. Thank you for inviting me. I am just Kaylia Rhodes on Instagram, performance posing on Instagram, and then performanceposing.com. So we do have a website where you can see all of our information, work with us. I got myself and two other girls that work with me. And so, yeah, we're solely on Instagram and then our website.
Kayla, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate this. You guys, thank you for listening. As always, I will see you in the next one.